Hello and welcome. In this video, I'll be giving a demonstration and tutorial on the usage of Stochas. Stochas is an open source, probabilistic, polyrhythmic MIDI sequencer plugin. That's a lot to take in, but essentially it's a MIDI sequencer with the ability to trigger MIDI notes at random. Some instances of how it might be used include generating melodic, harmonic, or rhythmic ideas, incorporating an element of randomness or variation into your music, or using its polyrhythmic capabilities. Stochas works by generating MIDI notes for an external synthesizer, drum machine, or sampler. Therefore, to get started, we need to insert it into a MIDI effect slot on an instrument track. Looking at the interface of Stochas, we can see the step grid where we'll be inputting notes. If you have used a sequencer before, this should look familiar to you. Each cell is a possible note that can be triggered. By default, Stochas is in mono mode, meaning only one note can be triggered on each step. This is ideal for lead instruments and creating melodies. The alternative to this is poly mode, where multiple notes can be played simultaneously, which is more appropriate for creating chords, harmonies, and drum patterns. More on this later. Here I have a sample session I've created in Logic Pro to help showcase different features of Stochas. Let's start with the bass track. As you can see, I've already got a pattern laid out here. Let's have a listen. Because we're in mono mode, each time there is more than one note on a step, Stochas will randomly dictate which of the notes to play. This means even though it is repeating the same one-bar pattern, there will be slight differences each time that adds some variation to the track. I can add more notes by clicking on cells, delete notes by right-clicking, and change the probability of a certain note playing by clicking and dragging up or down. Medium has twice the trigger chance of low, and high has twice the trigger chance of medium. Now let's take a look at the plugged synth track. Here I have notes on every step, but I've also put an equal chance of off notes on each step, resulting in some interesting rhythmic ideas. Looking at the settings here, I've set the scale to C major, so I can easily add notes at random and know that they will stay in key. Of course, you can also change this with a selection of commonly used scales in any other key. It is also possible to create a custom scale, in which each note can be edited individually. This is especially useful for triggering drums and samples which aren't based on pitch. Another setting we have available is the playback speed, going from 1/16 to 4 times. Moving on to the electric piano, you'll see I have two instances of Stochas running on this track. This is to make use of another feature where you can use one instance of Stochas to impact another. First, let's take a look at and listen to the audible MIDI notes for this track. Notice how the chord keeps changing every couple of bars. This effect is coming from switching the active pattern. We can have up to 8 unique patterns, and in this case I've used 4 of them to create different chord patterns. I've inserted a preceding instance of Stochas in the signal chain to tell this one when to change the active pattern. Here's how. First, we have one instance of Stochas set up to feed MIDI notes into our instrument. In the Patch Options tab, we must make sure to enable Respond to MIDI, which allows Stochas to receive and react to incoming MIDI data. Now, in the MIDI mapping window, we can dictate which action will occur and which MIDI note will trigger it. For example, here I've set it up so that the notes C-2 to G-2 will change the active pattern. We also have many other actions to choose from, such as muting and unmuting, setting the speed, transposing, etc. The next step is to insert another Stochas in the preceding MIDI effect slot. In this pattern, we manually change the scale to include the MIDI notes we chose earlier, and can then input notes just like before. I've also changed the playback speed to half. So in this case, every 2 bars, it will randomly choose between patterns 1 to 4. On the melodic lead track, I've made use of the chain function. First, I'll change to the chain view under the step grid to see what we've got. The yellow lines between these notes indicate that they are chained together, meaning that if the first note of a chain is played, then anything chained to it is certain to follow. We can create chains by simply clicking and dragging which notes we want to chain together while in the chain view. You can delete chains by right-clicking, and also create negative chains by holding Command on Mac or Control on Windows. A negative chain has the opposite effect of a chain, so if one note is played, then the chained note will not play. By holding Command and Shift or Control and Shift on Windows, we can create more advanced chains as well. I'll now play this track so we can see it in action. Moving on to the drum track now, which has a little more going on. This example makes use of multiple layers to help keep track of individual parts of the kit, and add versatility with combining mono and poly modes. On layer 1, I have the hi-hats playing 16th notes. I've also thrown in chances for the hi-hat to open, which, since this layer is in mono mode, will not play at the same time as the closed hi-hats. Here I also show how you can extend note lengths by clicking and dragging on the ends of notes. I've done this to prevent the open hi-hat from being cut off. In the Groove Swing tab, we can add swing based on a percentage, or change the groove on each individual step by clicking and dragging. On the second layer, I have all my polyphonic components. While in poly mode, we have greater control over the chance of each note occurring. As opposed to low, medium, and high, we can choose an exact percentage of any note triggering. Any note on 0% will never occur unless it's part of a chain, such as these cowbells. Now looking at some more options in the tab below, I've raised the position and velocity variance slightly to give a humanized effect to the timing and strength of each note. If I want to, I can also put variation on the length of each note, although of course this won't have much of an effect on drum samples. We can also look at the velocity view, where we can change the base velocity value of each note, and the shift view, where we can change the timing of each note. Putting all of these instruments together, this is what the track sounds like in full. This concludes the tutorial. I hope this video has been helpful in your understanding of how Stochas works, and thank you for watching.